رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. Okay, the second is actually history and gratitude. This is an important lesson, a very key lesson, which is, you know, in the Quran, you would think Allah is only going to talk about what we should believe, what we shouldn't believe, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. That's pretty much it, right? But a huge part of the Quran is actually history. A huge part of the Quran is what? History. And specifically, what I want to highlight today is the history of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is a big part of the Quran, right? So there are places like Surah At-Tawbah that are talking about the conquest of Makkah and beyond. Or there's places like Surah Al-Fath, which are talking about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and what happened afterwards. Or a huge chunk of Surah Al-Imran is commenting on what happened in the Battle of Uhud. Or a huge, you know, almost the entirety of Surah Al-Anfal is a commentary about what happens after the Battle of Badr, for example. So there are places in the Quran that are very specific to the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the question arises, okay, fine, this has to do with the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. What does it have to do with you and me? Because Quran is supposed to be timeless guidance, right? It's supposed to be timeless guidance. And what we have to internalize here is that the life of our messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is actually a part of being Muslim. It's a part of my psyche. I have to revisit his life, revisit his struggle, because it connects me to him. Now, let me give you other than Islam examples, because this happens in the outside world, but Quran does it in a remarkable way. Every country in the world has some kind of Independence Day, right? They have an Independence Day where they revisit the nation's history. Or they have some kind of memorial day for a great war, the day they had a victory, or a great massacre that happened, right? Some kind of a day to commemorate a great historical event that becomes a part of a people's national identity. It becomes a part of their national identity. And a really important part of that day is to revisit that history, to remember. And they'll say things like, never forget. Never forget, right? And it's a part of what makes you love your nation. It's a part of what makes you a part of that struggle. It makes you feel like you're living or you're a continuation of that legacy. It makes you grateful for the soldiers or whoever made those sacrifices. It makes you grateful for them, right? Well, the same way that my father and his life is a part of my identity, and his father is a part of my identity, and his father is a part of my identity. That's my ethnic identity. Well, more important than that is my identity as someone who carries La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the core part of my identity. And that part, and the only way I can truly sustain that connection to Allah and His Messenger both, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is there are some parts of his life and some parts of that history that Allah put in the Quran. So I review it when I'm reciting the Quran over and over again. I'm reliving the Prophet's life, alayhi salatu wasalam. With those words, Allah captured some of those incidents because refreshing that history is a part of our consciousness. It becomes an absolute part of our consciousness as a Muslim. And one of those events is actually the beginning of revelation. Quran started coming down to Muhammad Rasulullah, which is the start of this entire mission. In fact, the entire mission, you can think of it as the entire seerah of the Prophet. The purpose of it is the delivery of the Quran. That's what it is. And what did Allah do? Instead of making us celebrate a day to remember that, a day to remember that, an event to remember that, what Allah has done instead is He's given us an entire month to remember that. And the other major memorial event that we have, celebratory event that we have, is actually the institution of Hajj. And in Hajj, we're remembering two prophets at the same time. We're remembering and commemorating the struggles of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam liberated the Kaaba so we can actually restore the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even the Hajj ties back to history. The same way the month of Ramadan actually ties back to history. Which is, why am I saying that? Because the ayat of Ramadan say, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. Allah could have just said, the month of Ramadan, fast in it. He could have just said that. But the first thing He told us is, why is this event significant? Because the most important event in history, the delivery of the final word of Allah, happened in this month. The seerah is the seerah because of this month. We have a connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of this month. The dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam from thousands of years ago was answered. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. The prayer of Ibrahim when he was building the Kaaba, Ya Allah, one day send them a messenger. That prayer was answered the moment the Quran started coming down in this month. This month is historically the most significant month in the identity of a Muslim. It's not just about fasting. Now, fasting I talked about. The first thing was taqwa. The second thing is, this is a part of our identity as a people. We have to be conscious and aware. Now, why do people have memorials? Oh, we have to remember the sacrifices of those people, right? Well, what is the significance of remembering that Quran came in Ramadan? Well, the Quran didn't just come with some words that you can conveniently recite. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited these words, he was humiliated. He was rejected by his own people. His easy life became the hardest. The people who accepted his mission became the object of torture. They became targets. Eventually, they were kicked out of their homes. Our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam bled because of this Quran. He was poisoned because of this Quran. He was humiliated because of this Quran. He was slandered because of this Quran. So this Quran did not come to me and you that were reciting it in the month. It didn't come to me cheap. It came from the blood and sacrifice of many believers, most of whom is Rasulullah himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were people who died. We say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ Allahu Samad. We say it very easily. And there are people who are saying Ahad, Ahad, Ahad while they were being tortured. So we say them very easily. But they didn't say it easily. They had to pay a huge price for saying those words. It was not an easy thing for them to do. What is these words? شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. What does that do to me? It makes me realize that these words in front of me, I should not take them lightly, because there were people that I love more than even my own family. They paid a huge price so one day I could have these words. And this is a month more than any to remember that, to relive that, to revisit that. And that's why this second idea, this second thing that I want to remind you of, I was supposed to say 5 things, I got stuck on 2, but that's okay. But the second thing that we have to commemorate this month, because it's tied to the struggles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it makes us grateful for what he did, what the Sahaba did, and what Allah did by giving us this favor. What Allah did by giving us this favor. You know, like one time I decided, when I was at the end of university, I decided, man, I've heard, you know, excerpts from the Bible. I've heard, you know, one verse here and there, somebody quoting a passage. I'm just going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the entire Bible. I kid you not. I read the entire thing, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because I fell in love with the Quran because I read the Bible. I read the Bible and I realized, Ya Allah, you gave us a word that is so clear, that is so direct, that is so profoundly light, that is so easy to understand, that is so concise, that is so incredibly explanatory, that I don't have to wonder, what is it saying to me? What am I supposed to get out of this? It's so straightforward. Like, and then I started imagining before the Quran came and people were looking for guidance, and they were looking for guidance in books that have been changed by people. How hard it must have been for them to say, well, how do I make sense of this? What am I supposed to get out of this? How do I make sense of all these contradictions? And Allah gave this humanity this gift. And above that, the Muslims, the gift that we get to have it. We get to have the word of Allah directly. You know, it makes you appreciate what we've been given. And by the way, there's a direct connection between history and gratitude, because at the end of شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن وعند نهاية نفس الآية لعلكم تشكرون, so that you can all be grateful. There's a direct connection between the coming of the Quran in the month of Ramadan and me being grateful to Allah. I have to be grateful for this Quran. I have to be grateful for this relief that Allah brought. Not just for me, for humanity, but for me personally too. كَلَّا وَالْقَمَرِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذْ أَدْبَرَ وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا أَسْفَرَ إِنَّهَا لَإِحْدَى الْكُبَرِ نَذِيرًا لِلْبَشَرِ. SubhanAllah. Allah describes the 6 centuries after Jesus, when darkness spread in the world and the word of Allah was altered. For 6 centuries, the world fell into darkness. And then Allah describes that as the moon came for a little bit, which is Jesus, and then the night fell. And the night became darker, and then the morning rose. What's that morning? That morning is the coming of the Quran. And so he says, نذيرا للبشر, a warning for all people. لمن شاء منكم أن يتقدم أو يتأخر. Whoever wants among you, they can take a step forward now. And whoever wants, they can stay back. The choice is yours now. So it makes me grateful for the Quran.